Extreme hope comes from extreme suffering. Bertrand Russell. Bertrand Arthur William Russell, born May 18, 1872 to February 2, 1970, was a British philosopher, mathematician, and logician who was committed to the popularization of philosophy. He served as professor of philosophy at Trinity College and Cambridge University. He wrote many books, including The Classic History of Western Philosophy. In the philosophy of mathematics, he adopts Freya's logicist stance, believing that mathematics can be reduced to logic, and that philosophy can be formally systematized like logic, and advocates logical atomism. In July 1920, Russell applied for a one-year leave and went to China and Japan to give lectures, which had a considerable influence on the Chinese academic community. In 1950, Russell won the Nobel Prize in Literature in recognition of his most courageous gentleman in Western European thought, freedom of speech, outstanding energy, courage, wisdom, and sensibility, who represents the original meaning and spirit of the Nobel Prize. Let us appreciate Bertrand Russell's quotes together. Have a lot of fun with useless knowledge. War does not determine who is right, only who is left. Men are born ignorant, not stupid. They are dumbed down by education. The root cause of the trouble is that in the modern world, stupid people are arrogant and smart people are full of doubts. Life is nothing but a competition for the criminals and not the victims. The world is full of amazing things, patiently waiting for our wisdom to become sharper. 3 passions, simple but overwhelmingly strong, govern my life: the desire for love, the pursuit of knowledge, and unbearable pity for human suffering. The only thing that can save humanity is cooperation. Fear is the chief source of superstition, and one of the chief sources of cruelty. Overcoming fear is the beginning of wisdom. A happy life must, to a large extent, be a quiet life, because only in a quiet atmosphere can one dare to live truly happy. Those who have never known the deep intimacy and intense companionship of love for one another miss out on the best that life has to offer. Religion is a holdover from the earliest days of our intellect, and it fades away as we adopt reason and science as our guides. The proponents of capitalism are very much inclined to appeal to the sacred principles of liberty, embodied in the maxim, while tyranny is exercised over the less fortunate, the fortunate must not be restrained. Not having something you want is an integral part of happiness. Mathematics can be defined as a subject where we never know what we are talking about or whether what we are saying is correct. The fact that an opinion is widely held does not prove that it is not completely absurd. Some people say that man is a rational animal. All my life I have been looking for evidence to support this. Patriots always talk about dying for their country, never killing for their country. The secret to happiness is, make your interests as broad as possible, and make your reactions to the things and people you are interested in as friendly rather than hostile as possible. Overcoming fear is the beginning of wisdom. I believe in using words, not fists. I trust my anger knowing people live in boxes on the street. I believe in honesty. I believe in good times. I believe in good food. I believe in sex. It is the pleasure of the moralist to inflict cruelty according to conscience. That's why they invented hell. Those who forget good and evil and seek only to know the truth are more likely to achieve good than those who see the world through the distorted medium of their own desires. Humanity may be on the threshold of a golden age, but, if so, the dragon guarding the gate must first be slain, and that dragon is religion. I made a strange discovery. Every time I talk to an academic, I am pretty sure that happiness is no longer a possibility. However, when I talked to my gardener, I was convinced that the opposite was true. People should respect public opinion to avoid starvation and stay out of jail, but anything beyond that is voluntary submission to unnecessary tyranny. Unhappy men, like men who don't sleep well, are always proud of this fact. As far as I know, there is not a single word in the Gospels that praises wisdom. The true spirit of joy, of sublimity, transcends human feeling, which is the touchstone par excellence, to be found in mathematics as well as in poetry. There are two kinds of work. First, changing the position of matter relative to other matter on or near the Earth's surface. Second, telling other people to do so. Acquiring immunity to eloquence is crucial for citizens of a democracy. Morality arises from the art of recommending to others the sacrifices required to cooperate with oneself. Don't worry about sheer size. We don't necessarily respect a fat person more than a thin person. Sir Isaac Newton was much smaller than a hippopotamus, but we don't discount him for that. The whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are always so sure of themselves, while smart people are always full of doubts. A good life is a life inspired by love and guided by knowledge. Time you like to waste is not time wasted. I would never die for what I believe in because I could be wrong. One of the symptoms of an impending neurasthenia is the belief that one's job is very important. To be afraid of love is to be afraid of life, and those who are afraid of life are already 3/3 dead. We are faced with the paradoxical fact that education has become one of the main obstacles to intellectual freedom. Science is what you know, philosophy is what you don't know. The secret to happiness is to face the fact that the world is terrible. Most people die sooner than they think. In fact, they do. Democracy is the process by which people choose who will be blamed. As with all things, it's healthy to occasionally put a question mark on things you've long taken for granted. Extreme hope arises from extreme suffering. Patriotism is the willingness to kill and be killed for trivial causes. Drunkenness is temporary suicide. One's level of emotion is inversely proportional to one's knowledge of the facts. Anything you are good at will bring happiness. Of all forms of caution, caution in love is perhaps the most fatal to true happiness. Teaching how to live without certainty, but without being paralyzed by hesitation, is perhaps the main thing that philosophy can do in our time for those who study it. In a sense, both dogmatism and skepticism are absolute philosophies. One is known for sure, the other is not. What philosophy should dissipate is certainty, whether of knowledge or ignorance. Aristotle could have avoided the mistake of thinking that women have fewer teeth than men by simply asking Mrs. Aristotle to keep her mouth open while she counted. The megalomaniac differs from the narcissist in that he wishes to be powerful rather than charming, and seeks to be feared rather than loved. Belonging to this type belongs many madmen and most of the great men of history. Collective fear stimulates the herd instinct and tends to act ferociously toward those who are not considered members of the herd. I think we should always treat our opinions with some degree of skepticism. I should not expect people to dogmatically believe in any philosophy, not even mine. Don't be afraid to be weird in your opinions, because every opinion accepted now was once weird. What we want is not the will to believe but the will to discover, quite the opposite. The most savage controversies concern issues for which there is insufficient evidence. Bertrand Russell life story. Russell was born into an aristocratic family in Wales, England, in 1872, when the British Empire was at its peak. His grandfather, Lord John Russell, served as British Prime Minister twice in the 1840s, and his father, Viscount Amberley, was an atheist. Russell's mother was also born into a noble family. She died when Russell was 2 years old, and 2 years later, Russell's father also died. Russell was the second son of this Whig family. His godfather was the philosopher John Stuart Mill. After the death of his parents, Russell, and his older brother, Frank Russell, were raised by their grandparents. His grandmother's favorite Bible maxim was "Thou shalt not follow the crowd in doing evil," which became Russell's motto. Like other upper-class children of the time, Russell was taught exclusively by tutors. Russell met American Alice Pearsall Smith when he was 17, and he soon fell in love with her, and the two married in 1894. The marriage ended in 1911, mainly because of Russell's infidelity. He had had close contacts with many people, including Mrs. Ottiling Morrell. In 1890, Russell entered Trinity College, Cambridge, to study philosophy, logic, and mathematics. In 1908, he became a researcher of the college and was elected as a Fellow of the Royal Society. First World War. Russell opposed Britain's involvement in the First World War, for which he was fined and lost his teaching position at Trinity College. He was also sentenced to 6 months in prison in 1918 for his anti-war activities. Russell was initially interested in mathematics, but later gradually turned to philosophy. He also made many important achievements in mathematics. In terms of mathematical logic, Russell proposed the Russell paradox, which had a significant impact on the foundation of mathematics in the 20th century. Russell realized in 1900 that mathematics was part of logic. He tried to establish a logician mathematical system and summarized the entire mathematics into logic. In 1910, he and his teacher Alfred Nove Whitehead published the 3-volume Principles of Mathematics, in which he made a preliminary systematic arrangement of this concept. In philosophy, Russell's greatest contribution was the founding of analytic philosophy together with George Edward Moore, Frege, Wittgenstein, and Whitehead. In addition, he also made contributions in epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, political philosophy, and the history of philosophy. Contribute. When he was at Cambridge University, Russell believed in idealism and neo-Hegelianism. However, in 1898, under the influence of Moore, Russell gave up idealism and turned to study realism, and soon became an advocate of new realism. Since then, Russell has always emphasized the importance of modern logic and science and criticized idealism. Towards the end of his long life, he wrote an elegant and emotional autobiography, summarizing his political beliefs, passion for philosophy and deep pursuit of love. Russell also declared that, as the First World War showed, the world is a terrible place. In comparison, although formal philosophy can provide shelter, it is ultimately a waste of time. Welcome to subscribe to my channel. Luck and love are with you.